Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Bechet, and this is the AAF Exchange, a podcast from the American Action Forum, where experts provide clear, data-driven insights into today's economic and domestic policy issues. Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. Are you going to watch tonight?
Yes.
It's going to be... I'm going to watch because I think I have to. And honestly, I know we want Patriots are in full-on tank mode, but I will say it will be nice if we beat you tonight.
I'm going to watch for the same reason people go to watch, cars crash. I mean, it's just this morbid fascination with watching two horrible teams play each other.
Two horrible teams with backup quarterbacks playing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be
But
great.
there is so little drop-off from our starter to our backup. That's
Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi. I don't really see a difference.
Can you tell them apart? If you put them in a lineup, could you pick them out?
No, one looks like he plays the other one in a bad movie about himself.
Excellent.
But I mean, the only silver lining in all this is if you look at the quarterback matchups this weekend, there's not a lot of good ones.
Right.
I mean,
forget it.
I've never seen this many quarterback injuries, and maybe it's just anecdotal, but...
So here's one of life's mysteries. The NFL is decimated at quarterback, and Tua is still playing. Explain this to me. Explain this to me.
That is something. That is something. We should leave the football talk there.
Done?
And should we talk about what we actually came to talk about today?
Sure, let's do it.
Why not? On this episode of the AAF Exchange, Congress's year-end to-do list, and an update on the economy. Joining us to discuss all of this is AAF's Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Doug, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So before we jump into the nitty-gritty of the last-minute legislation, and then, of course, the state of the economy, what's been on your mind?
It's the Biden administration's sort of wholesale assault on intellectual property rights. It isn't any one single thing, but if a couple years back they, for the first time, didn't defend the patents on the COVID vaccines in the international regime. So we have an international patent protection regime, and they just let it go in the TRIPS, the trade-related intellectual property regime. So they said other countries can use it, and that was troubling. It was a precedent I didn't think they should set. Then they devalued drug patents by doing the price negotiation. So have a patent, but you can't make any money. We're going to take that away. They announced this morning, leaked last night, that they're going to provide guidelines for, quote, march-in rights, where any drug that's been developed using public money, and the question is what these guidelines will look like. If you got a dime of some project 1 million years ago, then they're going to allow agencies to, quote, march in and license that product for production by other people. So it's a steady undercutting of the sort of intellectual property protections and the innovation regime that is fostered. I think it's short-sighted. I really do. I mean, it's a fundamental problem in economics that you give people a monopoly for a short time, and that gives them an incentive to develop the product. Mm-hmm. But once the product exists and the marginal cost of production is zero, you sort of want everyone to get it.
Right.
They're focusing on the latter part. But if you give up too much there, you don't get the innovation. Mm-hmm. And the balance has been pretty good in the United States, and I don't think we should be messing with it.
Right.
But they are.
So, you said that obviously this is an administrative, the administration is doing this.
Yes.
Congress can't be really that happy about some of this.
I think this is walking all over the Congress. I mean, this is the kind of thing they should be deciding.
Yeah.
I mean, patents are in the Constitution, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes way back, literally. And I think if you're going to change that kind of a regime, that should be something that is debated on the floor of the House and Senate, decided upon and signed by the president.
Yeah.
Not Gina Raimondo hanging out at Treasury or at Commerce trying to decide what to do.
Yeah.
Not okay.
I mean, from a basic, I mean, if I'm an innovator, then I want I want this. I want.
And of course, they focus on drugs. Mm-hmm. But if you're an innovator and you're watching what's going on with their treatment of the pharmaceutical and the biopharma sector, and then you think, okay, we're going to put our money somewhere else. Well, what's next? I mean, they're not too fond of the way that the tech companies operate. That's been a big source of innovation. What are they going to do with AI?
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine a lot of concern being raised by this, and I worry about that.
And that's a perfect segue, as you mentioned, AI, into, I just want to get a quick little plug out of the way before we get going.
Yes.
The new product that we put out last week and will continue to update is, of course, the AI legislation tracker. It's a great resource for anyone interested in what Congress is doing with AI. Josh did a great job putting that together, and we'll be updating it. He just told me bi-weekly, so it'll be a good product for people to use.
Right. Those unfamiliar, it's Josh Levine, one of the tech folks at AAF, and it really is a tremendous resource. Easy to use. You don't have to be an AI expert. That's actually sort of the point. You can go find out which parts of AI are they focusing on. Is it on workforce development? Is it on the development of new artificial intelligence capabilities? Is it government contracting of it? Things like that. So lots of different categories, easy to manipulate. And you can find out what Congress is up to.
Yeah, and
it turns out they're really busy. There's a lot in there.
There's a lot in there.
Lot.
I think we went through 71 pages before we got it into this matrix.
Yes.
That looks really nice on the website.
And that smell you're detecting is the comm shop burning.
Yeah,
the editors.
We will of course provide the link to that. It's on the homepage of our website. It's a cool button that says AI legislation tracker. Highly recommend bookmarking that for anyone interested, and like I said, we'll be updating it regularly, as we do most of our trackers. I mean, we have some great trackers.
We have great trackers. Tariff trackers, Federal Reserve balance sheet trackers, you name it, we track it.
I loved when back in the pandemic, you might remember, we did the PPP tracker, and that was constantly the top. For the top
most visits on the website,
visited paper on the website, which is really interesting. All right, let's move on to Congress, because I guess they have some work to do before they break for the rest of the year. And they only have a few short weeks to go.
So it was reported that Majority Leader Scalise said they would be done by December 14th, which is the earliest since 2000.
7 days.
Last time I checked, that was a week away, and I was shocked when I heard that.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll see if that happens, and maybe we'll have to figure out what we're going to talk about on the 21st if for the next podcast if they do finish by then. But let's start by looking at the handful of must-pass legislation they have, and particularly the budget items. I think those are, that's what's on everybody's mind right now. Give us a rundown.
So you will recall that the new Speaker, Sir Johnson, got through the House, and then the Senate picked it up and the President signed it. This two-piece continuing resolution. So one piece goes to January 20th. The second piece goes to February 2nd, which is Groundhog Day. So someone has a sense of humor. And he has said he will not do another CR. So they need to get the appropriations for fiscal year 2024, which has begun already on October 1st. They have to get those finished. I have seen no evidence that they're close to agreeing between Democrats and Republicans, House, Senate. We still have four camps working on this. There was one very important piece of movement, which is the Freedom Caucus in the House has announced that they are willing to abide by the level set in the debt ceiling agreement, and that's $100 billion more than they had previously indicated a willingness to support. So now they're all at least agreeing on the same top lines. But that's the easiest part. Now you gotta do all the individual bills and the things that people want to favor, disfavor in those bills, and so that's a lot of work. Layered on top of that are additional funds for international purposes: Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. This has gotten tied into the problems at the southern border, and Senate Republicans are insisting on policy changes at the southern border as part of this this package. The notion being that if we're going to take care of important problems that are international in nature, our own southern border is one of them. And so that so far has failed to reach any sort of agreement. So that's on hold, despite the fact that the OMB director, Shalanda Young, sent a very strongly worded memo to Congress saying we're out of money. Like, we're weeks away from literally not having enough to do anything. So looking for movement on that. And those are the big budget items. A long time ago, the Biden administration also indicated an interest in a domestic supplemental spending. That seems to have fallen off the radar screen. If they get those done, perhaps they'll revive that. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like there's a lot of appetite for it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know obviously the international supplemental stuff has sort of dominated the last couple of days. Is there a likelihood of an agreement with Senate Republicans? Because I know obviously the House also probably wants those border.
This is one of the beauties of being a Congress watcher. You never know. It is standard practice to negotiate and then walk out and just blast the other side for an unwillingness to negotiate and say these talks are dead when they're that far from a deal. And so I don't know. And it's impossible to tell without really being close to the negotiations.
Yeah. It's the negotiation is always sort of this messy process.
It's a very messy
a lot
process.
of it's behind scenes, and we don't always know except for what they tell us is happening. Okay, what about programs that are up for reauthorization? Because we always have those at the end of the year. Any major ones that we should be keeping an eye on?
The National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, the vehicle by which Congress sets Pentagon policy, and they have a funding in the appropriations, but this is the policy one, and often a vehicle to put other things in that they care about. Congress has not failed to pass the NDAA in a timely fashion in decades. I forget the exact number. And, here we are, a week out, and it's not done. So that's a big one. And probably what's holding it up is the other stuff. What else can we layer on that? I mean, there was an attempt by House Financial Services Chairman McHenry to put crypto legislation onto the NDAA. And that got run off. That's not going to happen. Those bills are going to be taken up next year. There are other such efforts. So that's a big one. There's also the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. This has become a big deal since September 11, 2001, because it allows us to collect intel on foreign agents and threats to the U.S. But in the process, often you run across purely domestic content by U.S. citizens, and so there's this sort of tightrope act of getting the intelligence and the civil liberties protections sort of in the right place. We've changed it many, many times. We have to do it one more time, and they're trying to figure that out by the end of the year. I think those are the biggest. We've got some flood insurance stuff that we got to worry about. They kicked the farm bill till the end of the fiscal year already. Yeah. So they'll have another year to work on the farm bill. But that, believe it or not, is probably plenty for the next 7 days.
Yeah, I mean, if funding the government and getting all these supplementals done wasn't enough, then those authorizations, I mean, are important and will take time to get done. You must have read my mind when I wrote down FISA, bring up FISA with my Sharpie here, because either Josh or Jeff just put out a paper on FISA.
Josh did.
So.
With a co-author who's a Google fellow for the AAF folks.
Right, another good paper if people are interested should take a look at. Looking forward, like we just said, Congress already. That seems like enough, but we always hear about sort of these wish list items. We're getting close to the holiday season, so everyone's got their wish lists going on. Anything else that we should be keeping an eye on?
FAA. Yeah. The FAA needs to be reauthorized. They still haven't done that. I wish they would get that done. In that reauthorization, there became this tiny issue that I care about. I don't know that everyone does, but it's the number of flights in and out of Reagan National, which is close to my home, and so more flights would be better. More competition would be lower prices. Yeah. I don't know where that's going to land. My wish list is that they would get Congress out of the business of micromanaging Reagan National, but I'm a dreamer.
All right. Well, that's what Congress has left to do. It's going to be a fun 7 days if they stick by what Leader Scully says, but
tis the holiday season. It's the season of joy and happiness. Just watch Congress and laugh.
Yeah, that's basically where we're at. So, should we do some trivia?
No. Okay. All right.
Too bad you have no choice.
Okay.
All right. You recently wrote in an immigration reform piece, so, hopefully it's top of your mind, that the number of individuals aged 65 and older will rise by approximately what percent over the next decade?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I wrote that?
Yeah.
It's got to go up by about 30%.
Yeah. 29%.
Okay.
29.3 is, I think, what I did.
When I did the math.
It's 58 million in 2022 to 75 million in 2035. So, pretty much 30%.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the thing to remember is that we then just stay older.
Yeah.
This isn't something where, like, the baby boom happens and then goes away.
Right.
We just shift to an older population.
Right.
For as far as I can see.
Mm-hmm. But that paper, it talks about, the need to immigration to supplement that as well for our workforce.
Immigration has always been, in my lifetime, a very contentious issue.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, it remains the single most promising economic policy lever we could pull. Period. I mean, it dictates the pace at which the labor force grows. It dictates the composition of the future labor force, the skills. It's sort of everything from a human capital point of view, and yet we seem incapable of getting to that part of the conversation because we trip over those here illegally and what's going on at the border.
Yeah.
But it's actually the most important part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and you've been, I don't know if beating the drum is the right word, but talking about this for a while. I mean, I remember back a few years ago.
I've been talking about it for 20 years. I'm not very successful, Kyle.
Yes, exactly. But you wrote that great solution. You came up with a proposal
plan,
a couple of years ago, and you went, I think to
sailed through
New
Congress,
Hampshire,
didn't it?
like everything we write.
Yeah, I went to Iowa and presented it. Went up to New Hampshire and presented it. We tried actually to do it in early primary states to try to get some political attention on the policy problem, and we just haven't been successful at all.
Yeah, well, that paper, which I believe we put out yesterday.
Yes.
Is now the number one for the month of December after just one day. So, number one paper.
It helps
viewed.
when the Wall Street Journal editorial page picks it up and writes about it.
Yeah.
They are wonderful publicists. I can't get them to work for us every time. I don't know why.
Maybe one of them will listen to this and pitch it to their editors.
A big thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and of course, we can't forget about the economy before we end today. It's been kind of jobs week here with economic reports. Tuesday, we saw the ISM services and the job openings report. On Wednesday, we saw the ADP employment report. Tomorrow, BLS will do the monthly jobs report for November.
Today, we got new claims for unemployment insurance.
Insurance. And you recently wrote about the November Beige Book in your Daily Dish. What are you seeing in these numbers?
So there is continued strength in the numbers. I think that's a fair assessment. Like the ISM services showed expansion. We got productivity numbers that were really good for the third quarter. We also have a big GDP number for the third quarter, so those are the same thing. Like GDP grew at a 5.2% rate. Productivity was 5.3% in the third quarter. Well, that means that the underlying labor essentially contributed nothing. But that's been what people have heard, and that's led to what I think is a lot of premature celebration about the soft landing. They stuck the landing. We're done. It's all good. Inflation is going to go away. No. Those are all pieces of economic history. They tell us about the third quarter, July, August, and September. The Beige Book is about now, and it tells us contemporaneous economic conditions. And the Beige Book was quite somber. It was very downbeat. I mean, basically, out of the 12 Federal Reserve districts, 8 are flat or declining. That's a very different picture, and one that I sort of take seriously. So the real economy is perhaps not as strong as those numbers led us to think. It might bring it strong in August, but we've moved on from that. And inflation is not gone. Inflation is hanging around in the 3.5% to 4% range. If you read another scintillating Fed publication, the minutes of the previous Open Market Committee meeting, the staff forecast is that we'll get back to the target in 2026.
Oh.
Okay, so they're probably wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not July of 2024. That's
Right.
a long ways away. So the Fed sees a world that says this economy is hanging on, but it's not super robust, so they're not going to tighten anymore. But they can't also take their foot off the brake because inflation is here, and it's going to take a long time to get rid of it. That's a different world than seems to be inhabited by the Wall Street analysts who are super bullish and talking about rate cuts and all sorts of things. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But I want to bring that back up in a moment. But I mean, the PCE report, you had a dish last Friday that you said, good news, but it's still a long way to go.
That's the problem, right? PCE peaked, core PCE, do that, peaked at 5.6%. It's at 4. 4's good.
Yeah.
2's the target.
Right.
We're not home yet.
Yeah. and a lot of people, when you talk about inflation, they want prices to go down, which is nowhere. Yeah.
Yes. There are two prices in particular where they, inflation at the 2% target is not going to be good enough. Like that still has prices going up. People remember what gas used to cost. They want gas to go back to that price. When they talk about getting rid of inflation, they're talking about actually deflation, getting the price back to, and food.
Yeah.
Like they can remember filling this same grocery basket.
Yeah.
And it cost $20 less, and they want their $20 back.
Yeah. Every 2 weeks, I live alone, and consume moderate amount of food. Every 2 weeks.
Please don't confess during the podcast.
It used to cost me $60 for 2 weeks essentially, and now it's like $80 to $100.
Yeah.
So, depending on what I buy.
In the polling, this is not new. In the polling, this has always been true. That's what people think of on food and gas. They want to go back to the old price. It's not going to.
Yeah.
I did skip in my rage the president's pronouncement, sort of jawboning the corporations that, inflation's come down. You need to put your prices back to what they used to be, which makes no sense whatsoever. That is calling for deflation.
Yeah.
It would be the same as saying to those union workers, hey, inflation's come down now. You need to put your wages back to what they used to be.
Yeah.
No, that's just not. That doesn't make any sense.
That's not how the economy works. So you alluded to this, but there's been media speculation. Wall Street has been suggesting this, that the Fed might do a rate cut next year. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
As I said, inflation is still well above the target. They are, I think, quite convinced that their credibility is on the line. They have to get inflation back to the target. Inflation expectations are not back to 2%. They've sort of stalled out at 3.5 or so. Inflation's at about 3.5 or so, depending on your measure. So we're not in a 2% economy. We're in a 3.5% economy. Their view of the universe is to get it to 2%, you have to have a sustained period of sub-trend growth. So that means that the sort of somber report that you saw is sort of consistent with that, and they're like, okay, we're where we need to be. We're not. I don't see them hiking, but remember, even if they don't hike, they're still tightening the portfolio. They're running that thing down. They're tightening financial conditions. I think that's where they are uncomfortable. What Wall Street sees is the desire to get more growth and easier money. There's no question about that, and there is, a serious and sophisticated argument that to engineer a soft landing, the Fed actually has to preemptively ease because they have to anticipate that the economy is slowing enough, and then pull back and just calibrate that just right. I don't think this Fed is going to do that because they're afraid of making the mistake of easing prematurely. They've said that out loud many times. And so they're more likely to just stay tight too long. Yeah.
And I mean, if you brought up the minutes earlier, if they're projecting that we're not going to get back to 2% until 2026, then that means they would want to keep it tight.
So remember, that's the staff forecast.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying.
But it's in the minutes for a reason.
Yeah.
They want people like me to read it, and they're sending the message, look, patience. We're not talking about a quarter, 2 quarters. We're talking about in a year's time frame.
So, all right. Before we leave, speaking of frustration, rage, what's the most likely option tomorrow morning when we both walk in after tonight's game? A, am I going to be more frustrated? B, are you going to be more frustrated? Or C, are we both going to be equally as frustrated?
It's probably C, but I think there's a greater upside for you than anything possible for the Steelers. The Steelers need to win this game to stay in playoff contention.
Yeah.
They need to have some self-respect. You can lose, and all you're going to do is get a better draft pick. And
well, I mean, we already are at 2.
Or you can win and have the satisfaction of the upset and
the same draft pick.
And the same. So I view you as in a much better position to weather this than I am.
Yeah, and I really want that quarterback that we've talked about from UNC. But anyways, Doug, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
We got one more podcast before the end of the year.
I am totally pumped.
And I cannot wait.
I already picked out my outfit. I'm set. I'm ready. Okay, that's a lie.
Same. Let me guess. It will be a black suit.
A white shirt. And I'll wear a tie.
Yes. And the only question is, will it be the purple tie, the green tie, or will it be a mystery tie?
Yes.
Doug, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Tune back in for our next episode, where our experts will provide clear, data-driven insights into today's economic and domestic issues. I'd also encourage you to check out any of the links in our show notes, and also follow us on social media to learn more about AAF. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play.